Welcome back to Questing Beast. I'm Ben. Today we are taking a look at the Stygian Library. This is by Cave Girl, aka Emmy Allen, and it is the expanded and reformatted version of the Stygian Library put out by Soul Muppet Publishing. The original one was self-published and was print on demand, but this is a nice hardcover. We can see that the cover here is done with this nice silver foil, which is very nicely done. The cover illustration is frankly a little bit hard to read, just because of the way that it's drawn mixed with the silver imprinting. It's not totally clear what you're looking at until you look pretty closely. I think maybe a different image could have been chosen there. But as we'll get inside the book, we'll see that the art design and the art there works really superbly. Moving on to the back here. This is a dungeon in the extra-dimensional spaces between every library in the universe. So this is borrowing heavily from L Space in Terry Pratchett novels. You get enough books, enough information together in one place, it warps space-time and creates an entrance to the Stygian Library, which you can explore and travel and hopefully come out somewhere else in the universe. Of course, you can also try and find knowledge there. So this is written for compatibility with all old-school RPGs and suitable for characters of any level. Let's see what we get inside the book here. Really solid construction here. It's all stitched binding. We have these great faux end papers, which are really pretty and I really like. It's a great touch. Paper quality is nice and thick. It's this kind of grayish, almost newsprint color paper, which I really like. I've never seen someone use paper that looks quite like this in a book before, and I really appreciate it. The illustrations are done by Alex Sorensen, who's the same artist that worked on Electric Bastionland in the past. But I think his art works especially well in this book, just because it has this kind of thin, spidery quality that seems to work really well with the library theme. I should also point out that the layout done by David N. Wilkie is especially fantastic, as we will get to. Now, normally I do shoutouts near the beginning of my video for new patrons over on the Questing Beast Patreon, but I will be doing them at the end of this video just because we had a huge number of people join us recently. The artwork, these little pieces of art are just absolutely great. I love them. Here's some of the inspirations for this book, including stuff like, of course, Terry Pratchett, stuff like Corpathium by Logan Knight, which is a great blog. We have stuff like the Adeptus Mechanicus from Warhammer, Coraline, the music, some music from some artists that I have not listened to, and of course G+. What is the Stygian Library? So the general structure here is that of a depth crawl, which is a mechanical structure for settings/adventures that I believe that Emmy came up with in her previous book, The Gardens of Yin. And the general idea here is that you're exploring a large superstructure or environment of some kind, and you're not going to be able to see the whole thing because it randomly generates and rearranges itself as you explore. So as you move forward or move deeper into this library, the game master is going to be rolling up new locations. They're going to be combining a location with specific details that make it a little bit different, and then adding in new monsters or NPCs that you find there. So the combination of these three things is going to make every room pretty different from each other. And they're going to be unexpected, and they're going to connect in unexpected ways. We have a general structure for how that's going to work. You can either stay there, you can go deeper, you can go back. So you're creating these levels of depth that you're marking on a piece of paper as you go through. So you're creating this more abstract map. The way that it works, though, is that you can find locations that will cut off your access to going back or may draw new connections to new places. So your map's going to become more complex as you go along. But keeping track of exactly how deep you are is a big deal. There's rules for running blindly and getting lost in this place, and rules for camping there if you need to. Rules for how life and magic work in the library. The layout and the typography is really well done. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. It's easy to read. And it was really a joy just to look through. It's a minimalist design that really works. Whenever you see a line underneath a title running off the page, that means that that section is continuing. There's definitely a strong sense of using control panel layout here, where one particular topic is always confined to one page or one spread, which reduces the amount of page flipping. This does create a lot of white space in some cases, because you'll have a small room that'll only take up this much space and you have a lot of white space around it. I don't really mind this all that much, and because it does make it a little bit easier to use. There are some situations, though, where I think that the space could have been, or that the words could have been condensed a bit to fit more onto each page. I'll point that out if I come to it. We have rules for searching for a specific book, which is probably going to be a thing that's going to happen a lot. Once you go to the Stygian library, it's going to be a wealth of resources for knowledge. So what do you do if you're looking for a book? There's a way to track your progress, which is an abstract number, and you can gain or lose progress based on what you do, who you talk to, the kinds of rooms you encounter, and so on. The librarians. So there's an order of librarians that runs the Stygian library. There's 5 different types, ordered by color here, each with their own particular job. We get into locations here. So you can see that there are 35 different types of locations, or 34 different locations. And what you do is you roll a d20 to see what your next location is when you go deeper. But if there's 34 locations, how do you get to number 34 on a 20-sided die? Well, you add the depth that you're at. So by the time you're at depth 14 or so, then it's going to be possible to roll a 34 if you roll a 20. And you have to go much deeper than that if these deep locations are going to become more likely. Same thing with details here. It has a d20 plus depth, so the details get weirder and weirder the deeper that you go. These 2 pages are an example of where I think more density could have been better. Locations is kept on a 2-page spread, but there is just a lot of white space in between these lines and down here at the top and the bottom. I really think that all of the locations could easily have been fit onto 1 page. Maybe if you just did 2 columns or something like that, that would have allowed details to be on the opposite page. So you'd be able to see locations and details at the same time, which I think would have been nice because you're going to be flipping back and forth between these 2 sections a lot as you are rolling up new rooms. Random events. They're going to make each room a little bit weirder. They're going to inject some monsters or NPCs in there. Encounters for visitors. And encounters for intruders, because the library is going to react differently based on what you do. If you're just visiting, things are going to be pretty peaceful, but once you start messing around stuff, if you're killing librarians, if you're burning books, the whole library will become hostile and things will get much more dangerous. And we get right into the different rooms here. So these are the locations from the location table back here. Whereas these are ordered by depth, these are just ordered alphabetically. I like how they have letters down here on the bottom, which helps you find which section that you're on. One thing that would have been cool is if there was at least 1 room for every letter of the alphabet. I just thought of that while I was reading it because I saw these little alphabet blocks down there. It would fit really well with the theme of a library if there was 1 for every letter, but that's not the way it's organized. Some of these rooms are very straightforward. Some have a lot more detail. It really depends on where you're at. Catalogs, you have lecterns where you can reference books, including books that are dangerous and will try and attack you. Chapels, a dissection theater with little random tables for who's present, what's being dissected. Display case. So again, another example where you could probably find a way to condense this all into 1 page. I think it would be just easier to read. I love this art. It's so good. You can find an infernal gateway. Apparently the Stygian library is not too far away from hell, so you do find gateways to hell, and you have devils wandering about trying to get you to sign contracts. So if you don't want to deal with that, you might want to avoid these gateways. Rules for minor devils, ink vats, jarred brains. It's not just about books. There's a lot of, the theme is death and decay to a certain extent, but just generally information. So books, but also other things that contain information as well. The paper beehive, huge bees. Phantom databanks. One theme is that there is a lot of ghosts running around inside this, but they're often called phantoms. So they're kind of like the spirit of a person that has been distilled down to its barest essence. So it's just a kind of floating form of energy. And what this does is it allows for the library to use it as a form of energy. So you see lamps, you see all sorts of different devices being powered by these phantoms. A huge planetarium that can, to a certain extent, control time. Always a dangerous device. Printing machines, the Shield computer. So there are computers, including this gigantic mega computer that the library is using to calculate some sort of answer to life, the universe, and everything. And you can ask these computer questions and they will tell you if you phrase it in the correct way. Skeleton collections. So basically, as you're traveling through this library, all of the walls are shelves going all the way up to the ceiling, so you're enclosed on all sides by books. Move forward a little bit. We're getting into the details section. So these are things that you just add on top of the locations to flesh them out and give them more variety. Because there are, 34 or so locations, so you're going to be rolling up more than one copy of those as you go through probably. So you're going to need some differentiation. Doorways out. So if you travel deep enough, you can find exits to the Stygian library besides the one that you came in through. And that can lead you, it can lead you anywhere in the whole multiverse. You can roll up here to give yourself an idea for that. I think this is one area where it could be expanded a little bit, because if they go through a doorway and the players decide to burst through it, you're going to need plenty of information as to what's on the other side. And that can be a little hard to come up with. This book is designed to be run pretty much on the fly so that you don't have to do a lot of prep, because you're just rolling each of these rooms up as you need them. But stuff like this would require a lot of work to have something really ready when they just run through a random door. So maybe even more random tables than this, just to give the Game Master more things to work with, I think would be nice. You could, of course, just grab a random module or a random adventure off one of your shelves and just say you find yourself here. If you have a bunch of those, that would be fun. Lampposts. A note someone has left behind, along with lots of examples over here. Move along to our bestiary, so animate books. Again, I love these illustrations. We have a very St. George and the Dragon type illustration going on here, but it's killing an evil book, it looks like. Animated spells that float around, because information is alive, very much so, all throughout the Stygian library. Archivist liches, not necessarily bad people. They're just really into books. They could be a powerful ally if you couldn't get them on your side. Some random spells you can give them. We have a continuation of an Alice in Wonderland theme that we've seen a little bit back in Emmy's previous book, The Gardens of Yin, with Bandersnatches here. Black oozes, conceptual wells, crawling things. The information theme is continued by, for example, if a book bites you, it can start draining points of intelligence. Dust elementals creeping under your doors. Educated rodents. So the rodents here, all the rats are very educated, as you would expect in a dungeon full of books. And here's all the different types of subjects they could be experts at. Escaped fictions. I really love this one. So this is where you can run into literary characters that have gotten out of their books. This could range anything from Don Quixote to Frankenstein's monster, Lady Macbeth, and so on. But they have their own rules, because the rules of the genre or the book that they're from apply to them even in the real world. They kind of warp reality around them in that way. So for example, if you shot a gun at Sir Lancelot, it might not do anything, because guns just don't exist in his world. Eye Sentinels. So we have some classic D&D like monsters that have been rethemed and rebranded. Floating brains, giant bookworms, hungry books, infernal merchants, so visitors from hell, trying to sell you stuff. Ink elementals. Librarians. Different orders all have their own particular spells that they are focusing on depending on their job. They could be tending to the calculations, they shepherd the restless dead, they maintain the portals in and out, they maintain the books, or they maintain the library's infrastructure. Neurovores, which of course in standard D&D terms would be mind flayers. And near the end of the book, we will find a way to make a player character a mind flayer. It comes as a class. Obsidian marmosets, origami golems. The paper bees, patrolling apparitions, Phantoms, researchers, rust moths, skeleton crews. This has a take on skeletons where they're just, normal, relaxed, working class types, which is how I like to run my skeletons as well, so I appreciate that. Skull wardens, lots of different types of floating skulls to deal with. Tooth wardens, visitors. You could have NPCs from other planes of reality that have also stumbled into the Stygian library. Dreams and portents. We get to some random tables near the back here. I like how when it gets to just general random tables that could be useful, it switches to have this black border along the outside. That makes it a bit easier to find when you are flipping through it. And the intensity of these dreams and portals increases as you get deeper. Extraordinary books, because you're going to be searching for books every once in a while, so you're going to have to find really cool stuff if you get deep enough. Some locations just tell you to find extraordinary books. Searching the body. Searching the room. Rumors in the library, or perhaps rumors to help you get in there or help you find an entrance to the Stygian library. Treasures. So this could be anything from a burial shroud, a magic wand, a silver-bound chest of coins, a magical glass eye. How deep does it go? It goes all the way up to 35 or 34, so this could be a legendary monster-slaying weapon. It's a little bit generic, so you're going to have to flavor things to your preferences. Maybe give it your own names. Types of books, 100 different types. If players are just pulling books randomly off a shelf, you're going to have stuff to give them. Some weapon types. Not sure if that's really necessary to have a weapon type thing there. And some weapon abilities to make your weapons a bit more interesting. A lot of these seem to be somewhat themed with the theme of knowledge in libraries. And we have some classes at the back. The Mummified Sage. So this can be a class that that players are allowed to take if one of their characters dies within the Stygian library. Because it's often hard to make excuses for how they get a replacement character when they're deep in there. So this could be a person that has a scholar or a sage that has spent way too long in the Stygian library and has become immune to some of its threats and has become well adapted to it. And you're only allowed to take this class if a PC dies there. So it's kind of a prestige class in that sense. Some special abilities, including the ability to read anything, extensive knowledge, and the Neurovore, or the Mind Flayer class. So if you really want to be able to latch your tentacles onto someone's head and eat their brains and get XP from eating people's brains, the more XP, the more knowledgeable they are, then this is the class for you. It looks like a lot of fun. And then we get to our end pages again right here. It's a really pretty book, really well constructed, and it has these very solid mechanics that we've seen before from Emmy Allen in the Gardens of Yin. It's also a place kind of like the Gardens of Yin that you can put anywhere. In any setting, if you have any libraries, there can be an entrance to this dimension, so you have an excuse to run it. And I think players would have a really fun time delving in and seeing what they get, especially once they realize that you're randomly generating it. So they realize that the more times they go back, the more new things that they're going to see and the more secrets that they're going to uncover. I think that's going to drive a lot of more self-motivated players to want to go back again and again and see what is at the end of the library or what is at the deepest depths of it. Before we go, shout out to some of our new patrons over on Patreon, including Jonathan Jung Johansen, Jan Miluski, Stewart Mohammadi, Ivar Framnes, Jonathan Hastings, Sam Hazen, Miguel Vasquez Pombo, Andrew Lindstrom, Joe Rapoza, Edward Chavers, Eric Brimston, Ryan Lewis Baron D. Ropp, Keith McCullough, Avash Islam, John P., Jack Roberts, Jocelyn Tuohy, Brainchild, Ryan D., and Ben Wiggins. Thank you so much to everyone who has joined the Questing Beast Patreon recently and gotten access to our secret Discord. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time.